What's going on, guys, and welcome back. Today we've got a fun video as we rank all of the best, most competitive Pool 3 only decks in Marvel Snap. So no Season Pass cards, no Pool 4 or 5, She-Hulk, Zabu, none of it. Now really, the motivation to make this video came from you guys. As you know, I always do a meta deck report each and every month talking about the most competitive decks to use in Marvel Snap. And those are typically loaded with Pool 4 and 5 cards or new Season Pass cards that come in and sweep through the meta. And that can feel pretty out of touch for the large majority of you guys out there, especially for new players that just picked up Marvel Snap and you're starting to get into Pool 3. So starting today, in addition to follow up all of my meta deck reports, I'll have a video ranking all the best and competitive Pool 3 deck options that you guys can utilize to climb the ladder and get up to that infinite rank. We're going to talk about over 20 decks today, and as new cards go from Pool 5 and 4 down to Pool 3, it'll shake things up enough to make this an easy monthly series. Now, before we begin the tier list, I do want to be transparent. It's been pretty discouraging as far as making deck guides lately go. Finding that middle ground of having a competitive option or, the best in slot cards versus the good majority of you guys not having access to those cards. I'm trying my absolute best to appeal to the large majority of you guys with 10 plus cards to replace those options with, or having like a budget deck in the majority of my videos, but that doesn't seem to be working right now, so I would love to hear from you guys. Recently I've been getting blasted with dislikes, and it's pretty discouraging. A good 90% of those total dislikes on a video come in the first 20 minutes, so I don't know if those are just people that hate me as a person, but I do want to try to find a way to solve a Marvel Snap problem with my own graphics and videos to, again, have it exciting for cards that you will unlock and see what competitive options are, but then also give you guys plenty of content with Pool 3 and cards that you guys actually have. But hopefully that's where today's video kind of bridges that gap. We have 5 tiers today. We're going to be ranking over 20 different decks. And we're going to be looking at them, in my opinion, that is the most competitive decks, and most importantly, the highest cube winning decks. Now, this is important to know because if you have to fold or you lose 1 cube, even if it's in a few battles in a row, that's okay. Which decks can win you reliably 4 to 8 cubes, even if it loses you a couple of 1 cube games? Let's get to the list. To start off, we have our Pool 1 and Pool 2 favorite, the Zoo decks. Now, Zoo decks get a lot better in Pool 4 and 5, but in Pool 3, we're going to be putting it in the C tier for average. It does pretty well in some seasons, but with Killmonger being so popular because of the Sarah Surfer decks, right now, it's kind of floating between C and B, but again, it can be a great deck. Next up is the Destroyer, Spectrum Destroyer, and man, this is an incredible deck, and it's just extremely consistent. One of my favorites, and I think it's awesome to handle those Pool 4 and 5 decks out there with Sera and Miracle decks. This is going to be tough. I mean, I want S tier to be pretty exclusive, and I'm in between A and S. I think for now, I'll put it at the very top of A, but I might change this to S tier down the line. Next up is Cerebro, more specifically Cerebro 2, and you guys know I love myself some big brain play of a card. Again, this one's tough. I think I will be putting it in the A tier. It's highly competitive. You do have to learn how to go and navigate around locations, and there is some RNG things going on. Luke Cage can help this deck out a lot once you do get some Pool 4 cards. And when he gets demoted, that'll be a nice addition for a lot of you guys. I absolutely love the deck. I think Hobgoblin and Daredevil are pretty much essential to give you another win condition outside of pulling Cerebro, or to get out of that bad luck with the locations or anything that might happen. This is solid if you know when to retreat and when to go for the 8 cubes. Next, let's move to move decks, right? Dad pun aside, I think this deck is kind of slept on. You definitely have a big advantage because your opponent just doesn't know what you're going to do. And that is one reason why I think move decks are so great. They're all about just strategy and playing around your opponent and what they think you might do. Going against Cosmo can feel a bit awkward and not as consistent as some of our other decks that we're going to talk about today. But I do see move decks being the future of Snap, especially in battle mode. I'm going to put it in the B tier. You could argue even below that or above that, depending on what kind of player you are. But that feels like middle of the pack is the spot for move decks. Devil Dinosaur, man, I love this deck. The Two Devils deck in particular is one of the best decks, I think, in Pool 3. The reason why Devil Dino is so great is that you control a lot of what's happening. You know, you have a good eye on if you're going to win the game, if you should retreat. And we're seeing time and time again that Devil Dino is one of the best cards in the game, played by some of the best players. I think this deck is definitely an S tier, top of class deck, and one of the better options. There are so many different molds and replacements that you can do, and then you can have Zabu in there if you do have the Season Pass or those new Pool 4 and 5 cards. But even without them, Pool 3, 2 Devils deck is a classic. Now moving on, we're going to go to the best Destroy deck. There are plenty of different Destroy decks out there, the Moon Girl Death decks and the Deadpool decks. But if we picked one of them, Bayro is obviously the one we'll talk about. The one with Disruption, the wave on turn 5 into the massive turn 6. Now this deck is just as strong as when it came out, but the only issue of it, people know what you're doing now, right? People know that if they see wave, they're going to leave. So it's not as great getting those high cube wins because it's just tough when you have people retreating time after time. But also with all these other decks on the rise, it is kind of falling out of popularity, which also gives you a good chance to win with the deck. I think I'm going to put it towards the top end of this kind of A tier area. It's definitely not going to be S tier right now, but A tier, it's a great deck, solid. If you like the Destroy archetype, so much power and a lot of combo potential. Next up is Lockjaw, and this one's tough, right? High risk, high reward. It kind of goes in and out depending on the season, which is why it's good to have this in January. It's been pretty good lately. It was awesome in December with Leader and Leech just going everywhere and having that infinite play that you could have. I think I'll put it at the high end of B tier. Kind of feels like the right place for Pool 3. It's a deck that you can win a lot, but you're oftentimes not almost ever going to get an 8 cube win. You're going to get 4 cube wins and 2 cube wins, a good amount. But 8 cubes is tough just because you kind of show your hand pretty early. It's an early snapping deck. Although you could definitely twist my arm and make it an A tier. I think it's great, and I kind of go back and forth. But we'll put it at the top of B tier, which takes us to another casino-style deck in Hela. Now, I do think Hela is a lot better than it was. It's going to be awesome in February as well. But you do need some more Pool 4 and 5 cards to get the reliable Hela decks that we're starting to see. Or even Zabu. Zabu just brings up Hela to a whole new level. It's a bit too much high risk, high reward. You're just hoping those discards happen the right way. At the same time, you're hoping your opponent doesn't counter it. And then at the same time, you're also hoping that you can get the snap off and get a lot of cubes. It's either in the end of the C tier or F tier, most likely. For now, I'll have it in the C tier because you can climb with the deck. All right, so now we've got discard. And to represent discard, I think we'll go with the Lockjaw discard deck, which I think is severely underplayed. I love the deck. It's awesome, and it's a great thing to have just dependable, reliable wins with. Dracula soaking up your Apocalypse or America Chavez left in your hand is pretty much always a high cube winner because people, even though they expect it, you just have so much spread of power on the board. I'm kind of in between B and A. I'm going to put this one in A tier as well. And I think it's great. I think we're going to have a lot of decks in A tier as highly competitive options. And this one is definitely on the list as well. Discard is one of those decks that are awesome in Pool 3 and only get better as you go through the pools and collect more cards. All right, Mr. Negative. Now, I've said this in my meta deck report. I've said this before. People either love this deck or absolutely don't get it and hate it. Now, why Mr. Negative is such a good deck is it is dependent on pulling the right cards, right? But this is what I talked about at the beginning. You leave. You retreat if you don't get the right card pulls. You lose the 1 cube, but then you end up winning 4 and 8 cube wins so much if you have great cube management, which is probably why you hate, Mr. Negative deck. It can be a time commitment to climb like super fast, but it is a very strong deck. I'm not going to put it in S tier. I'll have it at the kind of in the more top range of A tier. I think it's highly competitive in Pool 3. Great deck and doesn't need any other cards from Pool 4 and 5 to keep it at its already strong value in the game. Albeit it does get better with a few new cards, but it's a great deck. Moving on, let's look at Zero. Now, Zero is definitely a deck that you're going to want Shuri for, which is a Pool 5 card at the moment. Zero is decent. It can be a somewhat competitive deck at times, but definitely in Pool 3, there's just better options to use. However, Arnim Zola, Luke Cage, sure is going to make the deck a whole lot better. Ramp decks. This might be one of the more challenging ones I'm going to rate today. Oh, man. It's a toss-up between S and A tier right off the bat. Ramp games feel like so consistent. Your opponent doesn't know what you're doing with any vast amount of 5 or 6 cost cards. You know, like double leaders and double dooms. All the crazy things you can do make me want to put this in the S tier. I think I'll put it in highly competitive. Sometimes a Devil Dinosaur, for instance, is much more dependable in some of the other decks we'll talk about today. You could definitely twist my arm and say that Ramp is one of the best options for only Pool 3. Flexible, competitive. However, do you play Marvel Snap for fun? Well, hell yeah, brother. But Agatha is going in the F tier. There are some good Agatha decks out there. Don't get me wrong, but man, Agatha clearly skipped like all grade school. Just is a stupid player. Just makes the worst mistakes, and the 14 power just really doesn't make up for that. Maybe like boost that power up there, and you've got a meme deck that can be slightly competitive. There are cards that make it stronger, but man, it's so unreliable. Props to you guys for climbing with Agatha. Like, hats off. Maybe one day C tier, but for now, it's in the F tier. The Patriot deck, you guys know. You know I'm a big Patriot fan, and it's for a good reason. One of the most consistent, safe climbs in Snap, in my opinion, for Pool 3. The Patriot doesn't need a lot of cards from Pool 4 and 5. In fact, I think it's just fine the way it is. Silver Surfer definitely can add, to the deck, but Ultron and the way that you get so much power on the board is insane. It's such a great deck to use, and people are starting to have Cosmo to protect their Patriot a lot more common. There are tons of ways to win with Patriot decks. So many cards that you have access to. This is definitely an S tier deck, not only in Pool 3, but also when you get access to more cards. I think it's S tier as well for Pool 4 and 5. Disruption, the toxic archetype in Snap. Now, definitely super card rich. Black Widow, you need Viper Hood. There's a lot of things you need to make the deck work. Unfortunately, until Luke Cage comes down into Pool 3, this is probably a below average deck for now. It can win games. It's a lot of fun. Debris is just chaos. But yeah, Disruption has some more work towards it to become more competitive. All right, the Sera deck. So what does this mean? Sera can be used in like 50 billion decks in the game. This is representing the Sera Control deck, which if I were to pick one deck and one deck only as the best Pool 3 deck, it's the Sera Control deck. I think once you've learned this deck, this thing can definitely compete with the big boys. Mysterio is pretty much essential in the deck. You can upgrade it, and it's super easy to follow. Like, the combos are great, and once you learn initiative and how the deck works, you retreat with the 1 cubes, and you win so many 4 and 8 cube wins. If you want to learn the ins and out of the deck, I'll put the link up above, but this is probably my favorite deck for Pool 3 at the moment. All right, we've got a few more left. On Reveal is a tricky one. We're going to act like Black Panther is not in your list, and having Black Panther with Arnim Zola definitely spikes this one up. Dr. Doom is going to be your best option, but Wong, man, he's a risky play at the moment. I think I'll be placing it in average. I think Ramp is just better overall in Pool 3. You've got some strong on-reveal options, but again, with no season pass cards, nothing like that, it's definitely more middle of the pack. Leader Leech in the good card deck. Now, this baby came around December, and it was played by nearly everyone, and it only has Pool 3 cards. It's insane. Such a great deck. We're gonna put it in the S tier because it can counter even the best of decks out there, right? Leader did get tamed down, but still a super strong card. And Leech gives me problems to this day. That little mutant he is an annoying ass card in this game. Leader Leech just uses good cards with a great chance to give you initiative when you need it to disrupt your opponent. Definitely S tier quality for this list. Next up is the highly underplayed Bounce archetype, and I don't think this is played enough. Collector, Beast, Falcon, Iceman, and Korg, and Disruption. It's a fun deck, and it definitely has room for improvement. I think a lot of people right off the bat would say that it's not a great deck for now. But honestly, I think it's pretty solid. You could argue that it's kind of right around where the move decks are because people don't play a lot around it. I'm probably going to put Bounce towards the top of C tier, definitely better than the other options. And then again, it could float to B tier for sure. Now, the last deck on our list is Control, and there's so many things that fit into Control, right? Like Daredevil. I think Control's good. It's a good deck. I like it. I think it's probably right around where On Reveal is, at the top tier play. I think right now for January, Goose just doesn't control because of Zabu, and with how the meta is, it's going to be around the end of the B tier. All right, so there is all 20 decks ranked for you guys, in my opinion, and anything, again, kind of B tier and higher, you can take to Infinite as long as you're great with your cube management. Again, all these decks, can climb ranks, but this is probably the best decks in order of Pool 3, in my opinion. Now, listen, there's nothing better than feedback. Do you guys like where I place a lot of these? What do you think? What decks do you find super successful? Maybe you're the best Hela player in the world and you think I'm crazy. I want to hear you guys' feedback down below, and let me know if you enjoyed this video by leaving a thumbs up. If you guys like it, then I'll continue to do it as a monthly series. Again, guys, always going to try to do a good balance of content that can appeal to the wide variety of you guys. If you guys want to help support me as a content creator, you can do so by clicking the subscribe button. Helps me more than you guys know as a creator. Hope you guys have a good one. Have a great one. And until the next one, happy snapping.